welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today and we have another show lined up for y'all. We have a special guest, Mike Oppenheim. He is someone that you should know. He's a writer, a podcaster, a musician, a philosopher, a book indexer. And oh yeah, he has a website. You can check out all that stuff. It's mikeyop.com. You can check it out. If you're watching us online, it's going to be on the ticker tape. And if you're hearing us on radio, it's going to be in the show notes. So first and foremost, man, Mike is someone who is a seasoned professional. I mean, he even has a podcast, and man, the title's going to kind of get you kind of knocked off a little bit, but once you get into it, it's going to be pure entertainment. He does amazing interviews for his show, creator of Coffin Talk, is top 3% philosophy podcast that's rising up the charts everywhere in the podcast world. So first and foremost, man, I know you have so much more on your resume, like 2 master's degrees and years working with hospice and managing restaurants and traveling over 30 countries, but that would take me 20 minutes for the show. I just want to welcome you, Mike, and say how you doing, man.
I'm doing great, and thank you. And yeah, I'm here to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I love everything I do, but that includes having great conversations. So that's number one with the bullet.
You have a very creative background, and like I said, there's so many things that we can get into on your portfolio. If you could, just for our audience, just kind of give us a little background of your professional world, how you got into writing.
Sure. Yeah. I think from the earliest age possible, I was into writing because my mom told me I would just like write weird stories and tell stories. And I was really interested in reading and writing. Then I went to school, and I'm not going to blame peer pressure, but I was completely interested in like television and, like stuff other kids were interested in. So I think I shelved reading for probably 20 years. But then in college, we had to take like a lit class, and I remembered liking a few books in high school. And then all of a sudden it clicked. I was like, oh, books are like television before television. Like it just, my mind was blown. I was like, these were like actually meant to entertain people. They weren't like meant to be assignments in school. So I started going back and like reading famous books that are supposed to be hard to read, and they weren't hard. And then the more I did that, the more I wanted to emulate and kind of like do my own thing. So I wrote my first novel in 2006 for a short story. It was a novel writing contest, and you had 3 days to write a novel. And it was like on the honor system. And my friend had an art studio. So I went down there and I wrote a novel in 3 days, and I sent it in, and I did not win, but they sent me a certificate and they said, you were one of the longest novels that we got. So I was like, hey, I got a weird ability here. I could like do great volume. So then I started working on editing, like creating volume and editing down. And then the next thing I knew, I was on book 2, book 3, book 4. And then I finally got like a real publishing contract with my 5th novel, which was exciting. But I'm actually, if anyone here is a writer, I would recommend self-publishing. I've actually had more success, and it's more freeing. And also the publication process just takes forever. It's like 3 years from the time it was like queried to the time it came out. Whereas self-publishing, you can finish it and, knock it out for your fans in like a much shorter period.
That's some great insight for those who may be new to the whole world of learning how in the world can I get my stuff published. What was your experience like understanding that not just that you had options, but was there a learning curve as far as, okay, these are some of the things I need to have in play before we actually go and go public with this project?
Yeah, but what's weird is like to give you the learning curve now would be looking backwards instead of forwards, only because I went to school before we had social media as an option for publishing. And then during my grad school in like 2008, 2009, it started becoming much more viable with Creative Space and stuff like that. So in grad school, they were telling us like, whatever you do not self-publish. It will not count, blah, 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 which was really terrible advice, but also it was responsible, good advice. Like, people in that limbo period, that liminal window between like 2007 and like 2020, where some people took the internet seriously and others didn't. That was a crazy first to market kind of wild, wild west thing. Now in 2025, moving forward, I would say the lessons I learned were basically what I kind of said as a quip, which is I would recommend getting a following and then self-publishing. But if you're going to try to publish with legacy people in any market, even music or any of the other things I do, they're just going to ask you now, how many followers do you have? How many people? And they're just going to tell you to sell to your own audience, but they're going to take much more money from you, and they're not really going to help you. So if anything, I would just say like maybe an incredible publicist who could like get you on shows that might actually like expand your own viewership. But I would say the goal of getting monoculture to like you is kind of unfeasible at this point. We don't really have a monoculture anymore. So it's more about just finding your niche environment and then making the most of that. And I would also just, as an final thing, as far as learning curves go, learn what you knew as a kid intuitively, which is do things for the excitement and joy of doing it. What will come after will never even come close to the peak of eudaimonic happiness, real happiness, not fleeting happiness that comes with just the pursuit of things you love and following your curiosity wherever it goes.
You have a rock band story as well. So, like I said in the intro, it'll probably take me 20 minutes to go in every detail of what you do. But being a rock band, what's the backstory on that, man? And has that ever influenced how you write your books?
Oh yeah, actually, I mean, music is my first and favorite love, and it still is to this day. I actually just recorded and released a new song, I think 3 weeks ago, so it's on my website. But it starting a rock band was the most thrilling and exciting thing I've ever done in my life. I got 2 really close friends, one of them to like pick up an instrument and learn it, and the other was like already passionately driven. And then we agreed to meet after college in like a random city and start a band, and then we added a 4th member. And for 2 years, we like rocked out every day. We lived in a house and like recorded and practiced every day. We got really good really fast, but we also got really bitter and really angry with each other really fast. And then our last show ever was like our first breakout show in New York City on a Thursday night, but still, like, for us, that was a pretty big deal. And it was at a pretty famous rock club, and we with help from like the club and everything, we sold out. And then we just got in the biggest fight ever that night, after the show and the next day, and we ended up breaking up. So I look back at it with nothing but fondness, because I'm still very close to 2 of the 3 members of the band. And to this day, we all, like, this goes back to like, it's not it doesn't feel egomaniacal, but like we still listen to our album because it was a collaboration. It's us. Like, I don't listen to my own songs like from my solo career that was after, but I still listen to that album because it's very different. It's like the actual fruit of like 4 disparate minds coming together and really like being one. And so it was an incredible experience. It's part of why I became a writer, though, professionally, is I work extremely well with other people, but it is just such a more like mental toll to work with other people. It's just such a different like beast. And I think I'm more efficient, and it suits my personality better to work alone.
And speaking of personality, a lot of life experiences will shape our worldview. You also, according to your bio, you worked in hospice care. What's the story behind that, and how has that helped shape your worldview?
Yeah, when I was 18 and in college, one of my first friends was older than me. He was like 20, I think. And he got me to go with him to this after school program as a volunteer called Homework Helpers. And it was terrifying. And then it was also just utterly fulfilling. And so I made a mental note when I graduated from college to always spend at least 3 hours a week doing volunteer work wherever I lived, whatever I could do. Obviously, you know, I would flaked out at different periods, but by the time 2009 rolled around, I started doing it really, really responsibly and religiously, with air quotes. And so first I did schools. I just always helped out in like what we lamely call inner city schools, because that was where I felt my calling and my heart went. And then when I moved to Arizona, for like many, many reasons that are too long to list, they didn't really have like schools that like wanted volunteers and kind of like that vibe going on. And I've always helped. This sounds so weird when you say it out loud. I've always helped people die. I had a very close friend from childhood who died in our 30s. My mom had friends dying of cancer when I was a kid, and I would like go over to their house and hold their hands and talk to them. Now that I'm much older, I'm 43, I kind of realize that this is actually just, everyone kind of has like one of many like weird human qualities that they get to like participate in this lifetime. And some people are good at like birthing, some people are good at medicine, some people are good at psychology, you know. And so what I'm just inherently naturally good at is I'm not afraid of the end, and I like helping people, if whether or not they are. So I volunteered at a hospice ward, and it was a dementia ward, and the experiences were incredible. The most important thing it taught me was, don't waste a second on things you don't love, and that includes people. But also like love hard and love fully. You'll only have regrets of things you didn't try and didn't do, and things that bad decisions you made at the end of life. Like that's all I ever heard people talk about was either I'm so happy I had a family, I'm so joyous that I blah, 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 or I wish I'd spent more time with my family. I wish I hadn't worked as much. Like that was, it sounds cliche, but it was very common.
Once again, you listen on Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our special guest today, Mike Oppenheim. Go to his website, mikeyop.com. My next thing for you is when you decide to name the podcast, since we're talking about death, Coffin Talk. Tell us a little bit, some insight, some of the topics you discuss and explore, and also some of the guests you have on.
Yeah, sure. The name is just kind of a flippant remark about there was a sketch on Saturday Night Live when I grew up in like the early 90s with Michael Myers, and it was called Coffee Talk, and they made fun of the Long Island New York accent, Coffee Talk. And so I just thought it'd be funny to have Coffin Talk, you know, so like it shows the logo, two skeletons having a cup of coffee on top of a coffin. But what I realized in hospice was that in America in particular, while this is a phenomenon in most of Western culture, it's especially a problem here. We avoid death. We don't talk about death. If anything, we make fun of aging and we tell people like always stay young, and we kind of like worship youth. And what that leads to is a very dramatic and traumatic miss and disassociation with death. And so I decided to start responsibly interviewing people about one question and only one question, which is, what do you think happens when you die? One, I think people should think about that. I think they should think about it not constantly, but often enough that it's helping their worldview. And two, from that question comes just endless questions you can ask a guest. I mean, it's like just such an interesting topic because it's not what happens when you die. It's just, what do you think happens when you die? And a lot of people say, I don't know, but I like to think this. And then usually I just try to piece together, well, how old are you and where are you in life? And how did that opinion change or not change? And how did it affect the decisions you already made and the decisions you're making moving forward? And I think based on listener feedback, it's just really helpful for people to hear not only like doctors who have met people with near-death experiences, but also just very regular people who are like teachers and lawyers and construction workers, you know, like all walks of life, just talking about this one thing that we're all going to actually have to face, which is our own, the end of our life.
Well, I know this is going to be a burning question for our audience. What are some of the things that you've heard people say on the show, what they thought about what happens when they die?
The only thing that's like really consistent is most Catholics say they believe in heaven and hell. That's a very common answer for that particular subgroup. That's not my average guess by any means, but that just stood out as you asked the question. I know like some of the more interesting ones, I think the most common answer of people who think nothing happens when you die, like a very common answer is we are energy, so you just go back to energy. But with that comes a sense of purpose and meaningfulness in leaving a legacy that helps others not suffer. So I've found that people who don't have religion in their life, even atheists, which is such a like forbidden word and it has such a strongly negative connotation, they tend to actually be very loving, very kind, very purpose-driven people. They're not like nihilistic, take what you can and screw other people, you know? So I think there's a huge, our culture right now in the year 2025 loves to throw the term narcissist around. We throw it at like everyone and we just see if it sticks. And I think that's like very similar to like how we view atheism and nihilism and people who don't believe in any meaning to or purpose to life. It's not believing in a purpose or a meaning to life doesn't make you a bad person, is what I've learned from the show. My favorite answer that I think I've ever heard is you keep coming back to experience what you've already experienced in reverse, which is like sort of like karma, but with like a twist on it that you get to be a villain, and that's part of the thrill of like living a life. So like, you know, like there's someone out there who is they think you're a villain. It could even just be a stranger who you accidentally cut off in a car, but that moment of that life of theirs, they were like, this person ahead of me is a selfish, mean, like inconsiderate driver. And so it's just like, that's like a small example, but we all have that, you know. I'm in my second marriage. I know my ex-wife definitely does not consider me like a hero in her life story. And I know that I don't feel at all guilty or bad about like anything that transpired. So that's interesting to me. And I think that's like one of the more interesting answers I've heard is that like everyone here who we like love to say is like a bad person, or, they're actually there on purpose to be your bad person. Because who watches a movie where there's no conflict and nothing bad happens? No one. Everyone goes to a movie to watch conflict. And so whether you can say you're a peaceful person, but that doesn't mean you don't enjoy overcoming obstacles. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy, because conflict it sounds like, Ukraine versus Russia, but conflict could be literally, I want to get into this Rite Aid store to get medicine. Well, like how do you get there? How do you park? How do you get into the store? Do you have enough money? What aisle is it in? Do you have to ask for help? Like all of that becomes like a narrative in a story. So that's probably one of my favorite answers. I'd never thought about life as like, don't feel guilty about when you do bad things by someone else's perception or even your own, but also never try to do harm, like those two things can be together.
Like we said about different culture and different beliefs, because what's unique about this platform is we talk to everybody. We don't talk to only ones that identify like so and so. We try to stay as neutral as possible, but the premise of the show is everyone has a story, and we've been telling stories since 2017 inside a barbershop when there was clippers in the background noise. I mean, I tell people all the time, I've been telling this story a lot this month. I feel it's for a reason, because people should know. People see the success stories, they see the highlight reels. But we were in the barbershop in 2017 with 2 microphones. I tell them it's like 2 loaves and 2 fish, that type of story. We never knew it was going to blow up the way it did. But when we started getting feedback from listeners like, wow, I felt like I was getting my hair cut in the barbershop, like the conversation was just so genuine, and you gave room for the guests to speak. Well, that's what it is. We are going through life learning how to go through life. Yeah. It's boring if you don't have any stories. I mean, like you said, to your point about movies, if there's not conflict in a movie, most likely people are going to, if they're on Netflix, they're going to stop and go to the next movie, or they're in the theaters, they're going to leave. And that's a good segue to talk about the richness of culture that you have in your life, because you travel all 50 states. I think you visited 30 countries, and you used to live in Thailand. So you sound like a very, not just creative person, but someone who loves adventure. Why so? What sparked you to travel so much?
Yeah, I think my parents, from my perception as a kid, were weirdos. They weren't like other people in my hometown. They were transcendental meditators. And so every day, in the morning, we had to be quiet for 20 minutes while they meditated, and every afternoon we had to be quiet. Friends would come over, they'd be like, why do we have to be quiet? And I'd be like, my parents are meditating. And then the next thing I know, I'd be at their house and their parents would be like, your parents meditate? Like, and they would be very like not positive. And so that initially made me just want to fit in. And maybe, I was like, I wasn't Christian. I didn't celebrate Christmas. We like, my parents meditated. I just felt like such an outsider. But then I traveled for the first time when I was 13. My parents took me to Turkey and Greece because they were travelers. And going to a basically Muslim country, Turkey, was just like mind blowing. Like, bells going off 5 times a day, people stopping to pray, even on the street, the markets, just how different that culture was. And then Greece was like very different, but much more like America. It was like one of the first Western, if anything, the first. So on this one trip, I got to see like the 2 guards of the old world, not Asia, obviously, but like of the 2 where they meet in what we call the Middle East. So from there, it just was kind of like a hop, skip, and a jump to like, I just want to travel and see everything. So I went to all 50 states. I started going to a lot of countries on different trips. And then when you read my bio, the only career you skipped was I was a ESL teacher for 10 years in San Francisco. And that has a lot to do with this. I would just meet students from all over the world, and I taught people from like 100-something countries. And so I just kept being like, well, I got to visit their country. I mean, this is incredible. Like anytime you meet a person from a foreign country, if you give them like, you said you like to give people room to speak. That's what I do. I believe it or not, people listening, I'm being interviewed, so I'm talking a lot, but I'm actually an excellent listener. And I just love to sit and listen. And that's part of traveling, is take no headphones, sit on a bus, just go on a bus and like go listen to people come on and off. Get out if you see a park that looks cool, remember where you are. And then like just go in the park, lie down, Go to a restaurant by yourself. Don't go with people, and then talk to the waiter or waitress, like, that kind of stuff. So, but traveling is, like, I am neutral, even though I have strong opinions about politics and geopolitics because of all that travel. Like, I just know that governments are not people, no matter where you go. And so I would say the average person all over the world is a good person. I really would say that. I would say, from traveling and from teaching, I'm very compelled to repeat to people over and over again, by far and away, the average person is just really good. They may not agree with you about like stupid, small, trivial things, but they would never intentionally do harm to you or your children, and they would stand up to protect your right to have a life. Like, and so I think the goodness of humanity is why, even though wars bubble and we've had 2 world wars just in the last century alone, I don't think the goodness of people will ever be overcome.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, Mike Oppenheim. Go to his website, mikeyop.com. Man, when you think about time, just flew by. I don't know where the 21 minutes just went, but when you think about the time you spend in traveling, a lot of times I have CEOs, average Joes. I interview everyone, you know what I'm saying? From broke to famous, it don't matter. In between, there's this whole window of opportunity we have in our life, and that is making these memories. When you are traveling, you're just busy trying to enjoy life, enjoy culture and new experiences. How do you keep yourself just free enough to make these pockets of memories? Because a lot of times, some people, we don't bother to make that time. And what happens, I kind of alluded to it earlier in the show, is we grow older and we start regretting what we didn't try or what we didn't do. How do you keep yourself in the pocket to try to make as much memory as possible?
I only am going to phrase it the way I am because of a book I recently read, but my life story is following my curiosity. Whatever makes you curious, go there. And this sounds weird, but that like includes like trying drugs and stuff. Like when I was younger, like I know that sounds like insane, and that's probably not like great advice. And I have 3 kids, so I hope they hear this with the right maturity. But like if you're curious and you're humble, it probably will turn out okay or even great for you. The story of how you started in the barbershop is exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like, if you had cared about your audience and you kept checking metrics, you would have quit. But you just keep doing something. And then even when it becomes successful, don't check your metrics and just keep following your curiosity. Like there's people who sustain popularity for longer than anyone thinks they can. And it's always because I think they're following their curiosity. Everyone loves like a band and they want them to release the same album over and over again, but usually 10 years down the road, you'll go back to listen to the album you thought was their worst. And you're like, oh, actually that's my favorite now. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because that band followed their curiosity and they lost tons of like fans because of that maybe, but they didn't lose their self-respect, their dignity, and what we're talking about, following their curiosity. So that's how I would say I make time for other people and things is, whenever I'm open-minded to what I'm curious about, it leads to good conversations, good questions. And I guess the last thing I would say is don't listen waiting to speak. I know that's like real, like trite, but that is like the best advice I could give people is like to be open-minded means to not be thinking about what you're going to say next.
I love what you said because kind of going deeper on what you mentioned about metrics. The funniest thing, I didn't really care about metrics. I didn't want to know about metrics until people start saying, hey, who are your listeners? And it's fair game because, yeah, as you're growing, you want to kind of be self-aware and understand what's going on. But I have a humble opinion that too much self-awareness is obsession and you end up not enjoying the process. And what I mean by that is, just let's do this experience, guys and ladies. Next time you get in your car, don't actually leave the driveway or the parking lot, but just imagine yourself driving with your eyes glued to the rearview mirror. That's dangerous, right? Well, that's exactly how I feel with this whole metric system. If you feel like all you gotta do is live by statistics and who's your audience and who you gotta cater to, let me just tell you, the audience, they don't care. They want to know who your guest is next. They want to know about their stories. They want to know about the failures. They want to know about all this great stuff that your guest is going to say. They don't care how many people listen to your show. They don't care how many downloads you have. They don't care how many Grammys you have, how many Oscars you have. They can care less. They want to either be educated or entertained. So the next thing, if you are like a new beginner in any field, stop listening to this whole like you have to depend on metrics. Okay, that's what established CEO companies and boards and all that stuff. That's what they do. If you want to be the unique person in the room, you want to have that unicorn talent. And I know I was going to get a lot of emails, people talking like, man, I thought you were Christian. Man, hey, stop carrying titles and start living your life, because the real audience, they want the real you. They want the truth. They just want you to be you, because that's all I'm saying to land the plane. If you pay too much attention to the statistics and the numbers and the likes and the follows and the subs, you're not going to enjoy the process, and your listeners are not going to enjoy it, because they're going to see that you only care about the material things. You don't care about what they care about, and that is real life changing things.
I love it. I got norovirus last weekend and I almost had to cancel this interview. What you just said was like so profound and so helpful for where I am in life with like when I go low and when I go high. And thank you. That was so well phrased.
I appreciate it. I can't believe time went up, so I'm gonna let you have the honors and wrap this up for our audience. For those who want to check out your books and also anything that you have to offer, feel free to drop it. But whatever you want for our audience to know, our viewers, let us know how we can continue to support what you do.
Oh, yeah. Just head over to my website. It's www.mikeyOPP.com. My name is Mike Oppenheim, so it's just a shortened form. My nickname's Mikey. So, and I just do a ton of stuff. I have a weekly email that I send out, which usually either has nonfiction or fiction in it. Sometimes it's a song. But like you just said, the goal of everything I do is to help people cultivate self-awareness and also to help people see the divinity in everything in life. So I love all religions and I love all non-religions. I just love divinity. And that's the word I use for like the magic and wonder around us. So thank you for having me on. This was a really good time.
Well, once again, you've been listening and watching us online. I'm Refocused Radio. Go to refocusedradio.com. You see all the links, and also you're going to see Mike, his interview. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel, Refocused Network, and you can watch his show. It'll be out tomorrow. Today's May 9th. It'll be out May 10th tomorrow. So don't lose your seat. It's easy. Just go to your favorite seat in the house and enjoy the show. Like always, Mike, I want to say to you, man, thank you for your time.
Thank you.